Over the course of history, as civilization began to form, we practiced several different types of political systems such as aristocracy, theocracy, and monarchy. In recent times, democracy and bureaucracy have enabled new kinds of people to participate in government. If we are serious about accelerating our technological growth, our politics needs to become nurturing and not resistive as it currently is. We'll be considering a political concept I developed in my spare time, which I believe could serve to accelerate technological growth in today's society. And although I currently do not have a name for it, it could be loosely defined as an artificial intelligence-based merit society. Now before we continue, I'd like you all to know I make new videos every week on Thursdays and Sundays, so please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more content. Now, due to the fact that there are many layers which will be relevant in this description, I will explain it from the highest level to the grassroots. At the highest level of such a proposed political system would be an AI, and for the sake of discussion, I'll call her Lucy. Lucy receives real-time data from every sector of the economy, processes that data, and from it creates viable policies that would maximize growth in each respective sector of that society. There will be no president or even a prime minister as we have seen traditionally in modern day politics. Instead, a council of elected ministers will serve to review and enact policies created by Lucy. It is important to note that Lucy would not be able to implement policies by herself unless these policies are agreed upon by elected ministers. Ministers in this system are very similar to the ones we know already. Basically, they would be the heads of specific departments within the government and experts in their own respective fields. A good example would be an army general becoming the Minister for Defense, or a data scientist with a PhD becoming the Minister for Technology, and so on. To explain the process which takes a policy from recommendation to an enactment in a specific field, I think it would be best to use an example. Let's say Mr. Richard is the elected Minister for Technology. He has a PhD in theoretical physics and is highly respected amongst his peers for his work in the field of science and technology. Lucy creates 3 policy recommendations after analyzing data on the technological growth of the country over the last 3 years. These 3 policies being an increase in funding for space-based solar energy projects, an increase in funding for nuclear fusion, and lastly, an increase in funding for cleaner nuclear fission projects by use of thorium reactors. Now let's say Mr. Richard, after careful consideration of the merits and demerits of all 3 policies by himself and his team, chooses to increase funding for cleaner fission projects by use of thorium reactors. His reason for disregarding the other 2 being that the technology required to make nuclear fusion or space-based solar energy is either too expensive or simply not feasible as of yet. This means while an increase in funding would accelerate the eventual emergence of such technologies, clean nuclear fission by use of thorium is a much more viable option. Mr. Richard, however, sets aside some funds which will be awarded to companies looking to make breakthroughs in the 2 neglected fields, after which he submits his review back to Lucy, who executes that policy as well as the tweaks made by him. It's important to note this only represents a highly specified example. There could be situations which would need a vote by all ministers within the council, like war or immigration. Lobbying is also highly illegal in this system, as it only serves the interests of large corporations and powerful individuals. This would include donations of any kind. At this point, you may be wondering where the ordinary citizens come in. Such a society would utilize a voting system where the people are allowed to vote on only local issues. Nationwide issues will be handled solely by the ministers. The only exception to this is during the election of the ministers themselves, which happens every 3 years. The voting system in such a society will be similar to an epistocratic one, where the voting powers of an individual are determined by their knowledge of the policy or issue they wish to vote upon. There would also be a yearly test taken by every adult citizen which would seek to quantify their understanding of current economic, technological, and social issues. You may have noticed that provides 2 metrics for deciding the strength of a person's vote. The first is the cumulative one taken every year, and the second being the person's understanding of a particular issue he or she wishes to vote upon. I can understand a lot of people finding issues with knowledge-based systems of voting, but consider this. A doctor's opinion holds more weight than that of a nurse, even though they both may have gone to the same medical school. Also, if I had a bothersome skin rash, I'd be more likely to listen to the opinion of a dermatologist over an optician. These are examples of scenarios where apparent knowledge of a particular field gives an individual's opinion more relevance over that of someone less experienced in that same field. Given the emergence of automation across all sectors of society, it will be harder to find non-skilled to low-skilled employment. In such an event, a universal basic income would not only alleviate poverty, but also promote creativity and entrepreneurship among those freed from the struggle to survive. Such a society may also implement free education so as to eliminate the artificial barriers which limit the intellectual growth of certain individuals in the middle to lower class. Furthermore, free education would lead to a smarter, more enlightened society on average, which would directly lead to an increase in economic growth. Now, it's important to remember that this political system is only a concept, with a lot of kinks yet to be worked out. But if done correctly, I believe it could greatly accelerate the technological growth of humanity, perhaps towards becoming a Type 1 civilization on a Kardashev scale.